got that break. It's a lot of pressure going for me, Johnny. A lot of pressure going for me. I'll tell you, it's a lot of pressure.
How are things going to the club?
What was that?
How are things going at the club?
Very well, very well. I'm on vacation now. For the month of July, I'm on vacation. I mean, they're breezing now. Remember those acts?
Who do you have in there now while you're gone? Do you have some big acts in there?
Porter's cleaning up. Okay,
Porter
who's in there? I don't know who's in there. A lot of pressure going for me. It's just terrible. It's like pressure, like a heaviness. It's always on top of me, the heaviness, always there. Other guys wake up in the morning, new day, up and at 'em. I wake up, the pressure, the heaviness is waiting for me, nice, the heaviness. And sometimes I haven't talked to it. I say, hi, heaviness. And the heaviness looks back at me, today you're going to get it good, you know. You'll be drinking early today.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Wasdin Wednesday, September the 13th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Stuart-Varney, My Take, The Rape of the Mind, No Free Lunch, Rules for Retrogrades, Bishop-Barron, Marjorie-Taylor-Greene, Jim Jordan, Elise Stefanik, the Sheriff in New Mexico, Newsmax, Vivek-Ramaswamy, and the last part of Chapter 8 of SEAL Team 6. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
It is not true that Congress spends money like a drunken sailor. Drunken sailors spend their own money. Congress spends our money. Dr. Art Laffer. This may be funny, but it is also true. Profligate spending has a particularly negative connotation with it when it is one's own money. But when extravagant, wasteful, reckless spending of someone else's money takes place, it is a double dishonor.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
The body takes over. The great group of psychosomatic reactions, although they are no mystery, are more difficult to explain. Let us look at an example which may make this phenomenon more clear. In my hometown in Holland, after a few bombardments during the Second World War, an epidemic of bladder disease broke out. At least that was the first explanation. People suffered from the need to urinate so often that their sleep was disturbed. Almost no one had a full night's rest. For a short time, there was a boom in the practice of urologists. Then psychiatrists were able to explain that this urge to urinate was one of the first reactions to fear. The victims had only to think back to their childhood and to recall their bodily reactions before taking examinations at school to see what was happening. Increased urination may be described as one of the tension-reducing devices of the body. The body may react to danger and panic with a variety of physical symptoms. Perspiration, frequent urination, heart palpitations, diarrhea, high blood pressure are only a few. We know that many of these reactions are related to the body's mobilization of specific defenses against threatening dangers. The specific ways in which bodily diseases related to fear and anxiety develop are conditioned largely by the individual's personal life history, especially his development during childhood. The infant whose early tensions and yearnings were drowned in milk and pablum will grow up into an adult who tries to fill his mouth again as soon as something threatening occurs. Overeating has become, for him, a fear-allaying device. In the process of rearing a child, the parent unwittingly trains certain of the child's organs to react to the tensions of life. Because man has many bodily organs, he can show a tremendous variety in his physical and emotional responses to threats, both from without and within. Psychosomatic medicine distinguishes between different character types in terms of the different organs which respond to outside stress or danger. There is the ulcer type, the asthma type, the colitis type, the heart failure type. Each of these types shows a different reaction to the same battle, the battle against fear. Feelings of social tension may be expressed in various organic diseases. In acute fright, however, certain organs of the body more commonly react than others. As we saw in our earlier example, the need for frequent urination is a nearly universal reaction to fright. The upset stomach is another almost universal fear reaction. During the Second World War, a medical team looked in vain for the bug causing an unknown intestinal disease among American soldiers who were preparing to land on one of the enemy islands in the Pacific. The doctors and biologists searched and searched. They found nothing. The mysterious disease vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. After the invasion began, and the soldiers were able to discharge in action the tension of waiting for the invasion. These men were not strange or abnormal in any way. Even when one consciously accepts the challenge of danger and is prepared to face it, counterforces in the body may defeat the mental effort. The mind wants to be brave, but the body escapes into disease. Consistency of child rearing, emotional security at home, and lifelong conditioning to acceptance of the various challenges of life, all these are factors that determine how we will react when we are put to the test. In their treatment of panicky soldiers during the last war, psychiatrists gave some of their time to an explanation of these various danger reactions. As the victims began to understand their reactions and saw how common they were, they took the first and most important step toward cure. No longer were they so afraid of their fears. No longer were they in such dread of cowardice. It was important for them to know that what had reduced them to the level of helpless childhood was part of the universal pattern of defensive behavior. As they understood this, they became less afraid and ashamed of their own private fears. They knew that their bodies were reacting like many others, and they became able to once more accept their duties quietly and with better control. Stamina and resourcefulness depend as much on self-knowledge as they do on the help and support we get from others. In times of stress and calamity, people begin to probe for the vulnerable spots and weaknesses in both their friends and their enemies. This testing goes on constantly during a hot war, but it happens during a Cold War as well. The Cold War exerts a continual pressure on human imagination and mental fortitude, and is the cause of many peculiar escape reactions or bodily reactions. Whenever fear and danger confront him, man has to make a choice. Shall he indulge in unchecked fury? Shall he concentrate upon self-protection? Or shall he accept his responsibilities? The fear reactions we've described show how the primordial impulse to self-protection, misguided though it may be, can break through all our civilized defenses. Only training and conscious preparation for danger, both inner and outer, can give a man strength to hold these reactions in check. This training starts within the nucleus of the family and is supported by the example of a peaceful, free community. These are the first teachers in the constant battle between inner fear and outer danger. Those who are in danger of being brainwashed can be helped simply by making them familiar with the facts. Foreknowledge has a partial protective function, and this belongs to the best security we can give to them. It takes away the weakening influence of anxious and mysterious anticipation. With this aid, their mental vulnerability is then furthered by innate inner strength, by the example of good rearing, and by the challenge and opportunity their society gives to them.
And that was The Body Takes Over from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, M.D. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, rules for retrogrades, 40 tactics to defeat the radical left.
Rule 15. There is no room for optimists in the retrograde camp. Optimism is voluntary self-deception. It's for this reason that Mark Twain once barbed, "The man who is a pessimist before 48 knows too much. If he is an optimist after it, he knows too little." Times are presently so dire, the fate of the West so truly hangs in the balance, that to survey our predicament with anything less than brutal candor is suicide. Necessity is so often the impetus for reform that if retrogrades are to have any chance of reforging the culture as a true Christian republic, militant optimism about the state of society will have to be jettisoned. Optimism mollifies and reassures. However, one would have to be borderline schizophrenic to assess the present cultural milieu and come away reassured. In the past half-century, we've witnessed, among other things, the universalization of abortion, the redefinition of marriage to include perverse sodomitical unions, the proliferation of drag queen story hours for children at public libraries, the pornographication of movies, television, and music, a mass exodus of mothers of minor-age children out of the home and into the workplace, a divorce rate that has spiked to over 50%, an out-of-wedlock birth rate that has spiked to 40%, a trend toward legalization of euthanasia, a steadily declining birth rate, a pop culture that extols drug use and fornication, the metastasization of the welfare state, the dawn of the age of bi-weekly mass shootings, the steady expansion of the powers of the federal government, the heyday of the regulatory bureaucracy, and the decline of the practice of Christianity. What is there to be optimistic about? Absolutely nothing. The man of acumen should be aghast. The medicine for our age is realism, nothing less. The retrograde must soberly survey the landscape, taking note of past losses and future vulnerabilities. Only then will he be able to begin addressing the crises hovering like albatrosses over the tempest-tossed seas of Western culture. Mod cons have all but succeeded in painting contrived optimism as a requirement for the moral man. It's a way to cast their cowardly refusal to fight necessary battles as a virtue rather than a vice. Don't be fooled. Optimism is every bit as much of an offense against truth as pessimism. It just happens to be better tolerated because it's couched in upbeat diction and because it's mistaken for charity by people of low intelligence. See the world as it is instead of how you want it to be, and you can make it as it ought to be. See the world how you want it to be instead of how it is, and it will remain how it shouldn't be.
And that was Rule 15 from Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy and David Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
Often at the beginning of the spiritual journey, we have a lot of consolations. There's a lot of positive feeling associated with it. But then God, almost invariably, John on the cross says, will take that away. Because you're not meant to fall in love with the good feelings. You're meant to fall in love with God's will. I remember Thomas Merton, he has these famous talks he gave to the novices. There's a reference in the Bible to the arms of God, being grasped by the arms of God. And Merton said, well, God doesn't have any arms, but he's got a will. Well, that's it, is to rest in the arms of God means to surrender to his will. And that's it. That's Christian spirituality in a nutshell, is discern the divine will and then surrender to it in a cooperative way. The rest is a footnote. That's what Christian spirituality is all about.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Stuart-Varney.
We have a $33 trillion
but what
debt.
are we going to do?
The money.
But what are we going to do? If there are 5 million here illegally, what do we do with them? Because we're not going to deport 5 million people. We're not. And at the moment, we're paying for them. We're paying food, clothing, medical care, housing, you name it. We're paying for.
And so there goes Stuart-Varney. I said, go, Stuart-Varney, go. Make money. He's getting rich. Here's another thing that he gets rich off. He gets rich off of Joe Biden. He loves Joe Biden because Joe Biden makes him rich. So do the illegal immigrants. He loves illegal immigrants here because it makes him rich. Good for you. Good for you, Stuart-Varney. Get nice and rich off of the misery of those that are being illegally sent into this country by drug cartels and the misery of the people that have to receive them, that are forced to receive these people, forced to receive people who don't speak the language, who don't have the same culture, etc. As long as Stuart-Varney gets rich, that's all that really matters. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart-Varney's My Take.
In the air, Phil Collins looking at New York City. Right, good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is now My Take. Both political parties are in turmoil. No one can predict how voters will react. We're in for a miserable period. All right, break this down by party. First, the Democrats. David Ignatius's column in today's Washington Post. It says, President Biden should not run again in 2024. Whoa. Drop the top guy because he can't win. If that doesn't create turmoil in the Democrat Party, what will? Another source of discontent, Kamala Harris. She's a drag on the ticket, but getting her out would alienate black women, a key voting group. The president is underwater on every issue. The economy, inflation, migrants, crime. Democrats are not happy with that. And the president is now the subject of an impeachment inquiry. Democrats will have to defend their guy from all the damaging information that's likely to come out about his corrupt family business. Now that is a party in turmoil. And so are the Republicans. They've launched a contentious impeachment inquiry. Not all House members, and certainly not all GOP senators, are in favor. And they are bitterly divided over a government shutdown. That is a party in turmoil. Look what we're in for. Investigations, impeachment, maybe a shutdown. Trump on trial, an ailing president whose every move is scrutinized. And I'll throw this in. A whistleblower says 6 of 7 members of a CIA committee looking into the origins of COVID were paid big money to change their opinion. Change it from Wuhan lab leak to, we're not sure where it came from. More investigations. Let me throw this in too. Both Trump and Biden are losing a lot of ground in Iowa, where the first caucuses will be held in January. Trump's gone from 62% to 49%. Biden from 69% to 50%. But in a head-to-head matchup, Trump leads Biden by 11 points. Turmoil indeed. Second-Varney, just getting started.
So there's Stuart-Varney, and he's sounds the tone of his voice. Wow, like he's worried about all this turmoil. He loves turmoil. He's greedy fuck. He doesn't realize that greed is not conservative. Greed is not patriotic. Okay, so he loves the turmoil. The other thing is, and again, this is part of the reason he likes to make predictions. I think things are going to be really bad from now on because of all this turmoil, because it creates controversy, and controversy sells, and when it sells, he gets rich. So, again, what he should be doing is telling us in this editorial as to what should happen. What's interesting is that in this article from the Washington Post, the headline says, Joe Biden should not run again. Good. Now, assuming that the guy that wrote this headline goes ahead and backs it up with some reasoning, then it could be a good article. Much better than what Stuart-Varney is doing here. Because Stuart-Varney, again, doesn't say what should happen. The other thing that we got to look at here is the bigger picture. Again, the left wants to make everybody in the world, but particularly Americans, think that they want us to want socialism and authoritarian government. And one of the ways to do that is to keep playing up the chaos angle. Country's in chaos. We're not united. Blah, 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 blah. That's what a democracy is all about. If you're looking for unanimity, you're looking for everybody to sing Kumbaya, go to China. Communist China is full of that. There's all kinds of people there that sing the party line. In a democracy, that's not the way it works. People have their own opinions, and those opinions clash, and sometimes those clashes are messy. But, again, our enemies want us to want authoritarianism, want us to want order, good order and discipline. And if the more we want that, the more we're going down the road to an authoritarian government and an authoritarian society. And I say, no, I'm not interested. I'll take the messy, I'll take the sloppy, I'll take all of the contentiousness that democracy brings with it, because along with all of that comes independence. And that's what I value most. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Marjorie-Taylor-Greene.
There's a little back and forth between Matt Gaetz and MTG sparring on Twitter over who wants Biden gone more. Well, let's do this. Let's break the tie, shall we? Joining us now is Congresswoman Marjorie-Taylor-Greene. MTJ, back in the house. Good to see you. You got it. We have an inquiry, but will you tell the folks the difference between Kevin McCarthy's inquiry and the full-blown vote and going right into trial to impeach President Biden? Tell us the difference and why.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and I think that's a great question. The reason why we need an impeachment inquiry is we need a deep dive investigation into the crimes of Joe Biden. But that's just the beginning. You see, it's a lot more than Joe Biden we need to investigate. We need to investigate and uncover every single unelected bureaucrat that receives a taxpayer-funded paycheck that has covered up Joe Biden's crimes. I want a list of those names, Eric, because when we get President Trump back in the White House, I want to make sure that we gut these agencies of these traitors within our federal government. And when we control the Department of Justice, I want to see them prosecuted if it's necessary.
MTG, so tell us how it works. You initiate this inquiry, so you'll have subpoena power. I assume it'll have teeth. In other words, when Peter Navarro said he wasn't going to be deposed by Nancy Pelosi's committee, will it have the same teeth if you call, say, Hunter Biden to the stand, or you call Joe or whomever? Will it have the same risk to them if they choose not to present themselves in front of the committee?
Actually, Eric, we've had a lot of trouble in our majority having these agencies and the people we subpoena honor these subpoenas. We've had a huge amount of difficulty getting information from the Biden administration. Think about the national records and archives. They won't hand over the 5,400 emails that we've asked for. Think about FBI Director Christopher Wray that forced our oversight committee, forced us to read a redacted document that was unclassified in a SCIF. It has been ridiculous, but the impeachment inquiry allows us to use the full power of the House of Representatives and demand the information that we are asking for and force them to honor our subpoenas. This is an important step for the American people. People have been demanding accountability, and we will be able to bring it with our impeachment inquiry.
So, it's interesting now that this is coming up now because we had Peter Navarro on yesterday, and, he's been convicted. They found him guilty of contempt of Congress because he wouldn't. Do you think the Department of Justice will be as harsh on Democrats that you're calling to be subpoenaed and to testify and be deposed that they are with Trump, pro-Trump people?
Well, I think what we're looking at, Eric, is we're looking at Peter Navarro as just one of many people who are the victim of the weaponized government under the Biden administration. And this is where the accountability needs to be held. And we can't hold those people accountable without an impeachment inquiry.
Thank you. And now the second half of chapter. Thank you. And now Representative Jim Jordan.
The facts are, I think, overwhelming for moving into this stage of an investigation. Again, you can just 10% for the big guy. Everyone's confirmed that is Joe Biden. 50% for Pops. That other email, the brand, Devin Archer, a business partner of Hunter Biden, in the deposition under oath said the brand they were selling, the brand was Joe Biden, and on it goes with the facts. The White House's position has changed multiple times. Multiple family members in the Biden family getting paid millions of dollars that went into 20 different companies. So you can go through all the facts, but the four central facts are the one dealing with Burisma.
And that was Representative Jim Jordan. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now Representative Elise Stefanik.
And it's important to look at where we are today and the facts we've already uncovered. Since the start of this year, House Republicans have uncovered over 20 LLCs used by the Biden family. We've also uncovered over $20 million while then Vice President Joe Biden, that $20 million from China, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, going into the Biden family. We also know that according to very reliable confidential human sources that has worked for decades with the FBI, that there was a bribery scheme when it came to Burisma and the Obama administration's policy for Ukraine. So this is what I believe will be the largest political corruption scandal in our lifetime and potentially in the history of the country. The American people deserve all the facts and transparency. That's why we're making sure that we're pursuing impeachment inquiry.
And that was Representative Elise Stefanik. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now Sheriff John Allen from New Mexico.
Let me be clear. I hold my standards high, and I do not, or never will, hedge on what is right. And I take my oath seriously. In reference to concealed carry and open carry, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office will not enforce this segment of the order. While I understand the urgency, the temporary ban challenges the foundations of our Constitution, but most importantly, it is unconstitutional. Let me be clear.
And that was Sheriff John Allen from Bernalillo County in New Mexico. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Newsmax.
Boo-hoo for you. You voted for it.
Yeah,
you got it. You don't like it. You don't like the crime. You don't like the illegal immigration. Vote the other side. We'll get it done.
And that was, I guess, Mark Lotter from Newsmax. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Vivek-Ramaswamy.
Well, look, George, I think that the way elections work in the United States of America is that the people in a political party get to choose their nominee, and then the people in the general election get to choose their president. The fact that that's a foreign idea shows how badly our political culture has decayed in this country. That's an obvious statement of how our constitutional republic works. Now, I'm in this race to be that nominee, and I think our republic would be better served if we debated who exactly in the Republican Party and who exactly in the general election was best positioned to reignite our economy, to reunite our country, to declare independence from our adversaries. I've offered unprecedented clarity on how I would go further
further than Trump in advancing that America First agenda in a way that brings all Americans together. And unlike many in the media, I'm not rooting for division by using a trial or 4 trials about one man to make that a basis for a referendum on an election. No, what I've said is clear. If Donald Trump's the nominee, yes, I will support him. And if I'm the president, yes, I will pardon him, because that will help reunite the country. But it's not the most important thing I'm going to do as the next president. It is the table stakes for moving this country forward.
And that was Vivek-Ramaswamy. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, SEAL Team 6.
Attaching burlap straps broke up the cravat's solid green color. Similarly, we camouflaged the M49 scope, binoculars, and other gear. On weekends, our time off, Casanova and I learned and practiced the art of invisibility. We worked on our ghillie suits. Then we wore the suits outside and lay down in different environments, trying to spot each other. Most spare hours were spent honing our invisibility skills. Stalking caused the most students to fail. The location of each stalk varied, and we had to change our color schemes and textures to blend in. Optics came in handy during the stalk. The naked eye can scan the widest area. Binoculars can be used to take a closer look, yet maintain a relatively wide field of vision. The sniper scope usually allows a slightly closer inspection than the binoculars, but with a narrower field of vision. The spotting scope magnifies the greatest, allowing the sniper to investigate objects closely. However, the field of view is the narrowest. The closer a sniper gets to the target, the more slowly he moves. At 2 miles to a target, the sniper stalks smoothly and quickly from cover to cover for a mile. He becomes stealthier for the next half mile, adjusting to how much cover and concealment the terrain provides. Within the last half mile to the target, the sniper's movement becomes painstakingly careful, crawling low to the ground. The right hand only moves forward 1 foot in 30 seconds. Then the left hand moves forward just as slowly. Sometimes, previous stalkers leave a trail. The advantage of using their trail is that they already smashed down vegetation, saving precious seconds of easing each bush or blade of grass down. Within 3 to 4 hours, we had to stalk a distance of 800 to 1,200 yards, arriving within 200 yards of the observer in an OP. If the observer spotted us with his spotter scope before we got within 200 yards of our position, we only got 40 points out of 100. Failure. If the observer saw a bush move, he'd call one of the walkers on the radio. Walker, turn left. Go 3 yards. Stop. Turn right. 1 yard. Stop. Sniper at your feet. Any sniper within a 1 foot radius of the walker was busted. Those who were busted usually hadn't made it within 200 yards of him. The sniper stood up with his gun and walked to the bus. 50 points. Failure. Upon reaching our final firing position within 200 yards of the observer, we had to set up our weapon and fire a blank at the observer. If the sniper couldn't properly ID the observer, give correct windage or elevation, or shoot from a stable shooting platform, 60 points. Failure. If we could do all that, but the observer spotted the muzzle blast, he'd talk the walker to our position and bust us. 70 points. A minimum pass. If the observer didn't see the shot, the walker shouted out to the general area where he believed the sniper to be. Fire the second shot. Most people got busted because the observer saw brush movement from the muzzle blast on the second shot. 80 points. The final part of the stalk was to see if the sniper could observe a signal from the observer. If the blast of the second shot moved the medium being shot through, such as twigs, grass, or whatever, and the sniper couldn't see the observer's signal, 90 points. Target is patting himself on the head, I said. The walker radioed the observer. Sniper says you're patting yourself on top of the head. Yep, good stalk. Stand up, go to the bus. Perfect stalk, 100 points. We needed at least 2 perfect stalks out of 10, in addition to an overall average of 70% or better. Even in fall at 70 degrees, Quantico was still hot as hell while under the sun wearing a ghillie suit, pulling gear in a drag bag and painstakingly creeping low on the ground. People dehydrated. After finishing the stalk, we had to go back and beat the bushes to find those who had passed out. We carried them back to the barracks. Casanova and I stayed in a hotel room off base, while the Marines stayed in the barracks across the street from sniper school. We were still on call. If our pagers went off and we had to bug out, we could leave without a lot of people wondering what was going on. Boy, we were prima donnas, having the best of everything, flying first class and renting a car for each pair of men. In our hotel room, following a stalk, I had to check Casanova on the places he couldn't check himself for ticks, which might cause Lyme disease. Left untreated, Lyme disease attacks the central nervous system. Casanova did the same for me. Nothing more intimate than having your buddy use tweezers to pull a tick out from around your anus. It took me 3 or 4 stalks before the lights went on in my brain. Now I see what they're trying to get me to do. Keep my overhead movement down, no shine, glare, or glitter. During one of my earlier stalks, I crept through a field of new wheatgrass. A kid came flying past me. "Man, you're moving too fast," I whispered. "I saw the observer in my binoculars. He hasn't had time to set up yet. I'm going to sprint up here and make up some distance before he starts looking for us." Dumbass. He cut right in front of me, moving way too fast in a low crawl. Damn. "All snipers freeze," a walker said. We froze. The observer talked the walker within a foot in front of me. The kid was 5 feet ahead of me because he'd moved so fast. "Sniper at your feet," came the voice over the walker's radio. "Yep, stand up, Wasdin." "You son of a bitch." What could I do? Go whining back to the instructor and say, "It really wasn't me"? 40 points. That hurt. Especially for the early stalks, every point mattered. I considered the possibility that I might fail because of this. It didn't please me to imagine showing up at Dam Neck, Virginia, saying I failed sniper school. Although the kid's tactic was theoretically sound, doing it at my expense was unwise. Needless to say, I had a meeting with the kid back at the compound. If you think that's a good call because you see the instructor is not ready, you make it, but don't you ever come crawling up beside me or in front of me like that again. If you get me busted again, we're going to have a different type of conversation. He never made the same mistake again, and he graduated sniper school with my class. Even after a sniper had enough points to pass, if he got busted on the same thing over and over, the instructors would fail him regardless of his score. Some guys failed because they couldn't make their ghillie suit blend in with the environment around them. "Dude, we've had this class for a month now. We've been working on these suits since before we got to this course. Why can't you go out there and look at the terrain and make your suit match it?" Some guys could make their suits match the environment, but couldn't stay flat. I saw so many asses in the air. Guys would crawl up next to a tree and think that the tree made them invisible. The instructors called it tree cancer. Their eyes would follow a tree down. Linear, bump at the bottom. What's that tree got, a cancerous nodule there? Fail. There was a lot more to sniping than just making a long-range shot. An Olympic shooter who could make the shot but couldn't make the stalk wouldn't be a sniper. At around stalks 7, 8, and 9, the instructors called out certain people. Even if those students could have made perfect scores on their final stalks, they wouldn't have enough points to pass sniper school. We never saw them again. I ended up with a total of 800 to 850 points out of 1,000, including the points I lost for the kids' impatience. Phase 3. Advanced field skills and mission employment included a final op. Regardless of how well we did on the shooting range, sketches, Kim games, or stalks, we had to pass the final 3-day op. The instructors expected a high level of maturity and independence from us. Snipers often work in pairs without direct supervision. They must be capable of making decisions themselves, which includes decisions to adapt in a fluid environment. Under cover of night, during the final op, Casanova and I arrived at our FFP and made our sniper hide. First, we dug down 4 to 6 inches, carefully removed the topsoil and grass, and laid it to the side. Next, we dug a pit approximately 6 feet by 6 feet wide and 5 feet deep. At the bottom of the pit, Casanova and I dug a sump about 2 feet long, 1.5 feet wide, and 1 foot deep, sloped at 45 degrees to drain any rainwater or unwanted grenades. Also, to prevent the rain from caving in our hole, we lined the top rim of the pit with sandbags. Then we cleared away an area near the top of the hole where we could rest our elbows while spotting and sniping. After that, we covered our hole with logs, rain ponchos, rocks, dirt, and the sod we had placed to the side earlier. Finally, we created a rear exit hole, camouflaging it with fallen tree branches. Inside the exit hole, we placed a claymore mine to welcome any guests. We kept a log of everything that went on at the target area, a house in the middle of nowhere with vehicles around it. A patrol walked over us but couldn't see us. At 1 hour intervals, Casanova and I alternated between spotting and sniping. We ate, slept, and relieved ourselves in the hole. The hard part was keeping one of us awake while the other slept. At night, we had to get out and go take a look at the back of the house. Listening to our radio at the designated time, we received a shoot window, the time frame for taking out the target. The man in the red hat will appear at 0200 on November 8. Take him out. A man with a blue hat showed up. Wrong target. Before the op, Casanova and I prepared a range card shaped like a protractor of the target area. Upon arrival at our FFP, we modified it by adding details such as dominant terrain features and other objects. We divided the card into 3 sectors, A, B, and C. Using prearranged arm and hand signals, Casanova motioned that our target had arrived in Sector B, 1200 on a clock face, 500 yards away. Then he pointed at the location on the range card. I acknowledged with a thumbs up, having already dialed in my dope. My crosshairs rested on the chest of the mannequin with a red hat standing in front of a window. If I missed, I wouldn't graduate sniper school. Casanova would still get his chance to make the shot, but I would fail. I calmly squeezed the trigger. Bullseye. After taking the shot, we stealthily exfiltrated to our pickup point, which required land navigation with a map and compass. No GPS. Back at the schoolhouse, Casanova and I gave a brief about what we saw on the way in, what we saw on the way out, and when we saw it. We used photographs and field sketches in our presentation. The possibility of failing sniper school still loomed over us. The major told us, "You two gave an excellent brief. Your FFP was outstanding, one of the better ones I've seen. I personally walked on top of it. Your briefing technique was superb." We breathed a sigh of relief. Of course our briefing technique was outstanding. We'd been doing it since buds. Unfortunately for the other sniper students, we were first, and ours was a tough act to follow. I looked around the room, and the Marines were not looking forward to giving their briefs. One young Marine was an excellent marksman, but the major reamed him so much that I felt bad for him. He had re-enlisted to become a sniper. Both he and his partner were caught sleeping at the same time instead of keeping at least one awake in shifts. The lane graders busted them on their exfil. Their briefing technique showed no delivery skills. If a sniper can't communicate what he saw, his information is useless. In the world of snipers, we call men like the 2 young Marines great trigger pullers. Lots of people can pull a trigger. He and his partner would not be attending our graduation. Dressed in our BDUs, we had an informal graduation. One at a time, our names were called to receive the diploma and the patch our class had designed. Until that point, we couldn't have the patch, let alone wear it. Ours was cool, a skull with a hood and sniper crosshairs in the right eye, silver on black. In script on the bottom it read, "The decision is mine." A sniper decides the time and place for his target's demise. The major awarded me my diploma. It wasn't the diploma I wanted so much. Just give me my patch. He gave it to me. Our class also gave certificates of appreciation and copies of our patches to each of our instructors. They really earned them. After sniper school, I returned home to Red Team, but I would only have a little time to spend with my family. At work, I immediately started learning how to shoot the 300 Win Mag with the loopholed 10 power scope. Going from shooting the Marines' 7.62 millimeter sniper rifle to shooting SEAL Team 6's 300 Win Mag was like going from racing a bus to racing a Ferrari. The KN-250 was our night vision scope for the same weapon. Night vision amplifies available light from sources like the moon and stars, converting images into green and light green instead of black and white. The result lacks depth and contrast, but enables the sniper to see at night. Then we took a trip to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and began learning how to shoot the sound-suppressed Car-15 while strapping ourselves outside helicopters on special chairs, like bar stool swivel chairs with backs attached to the helo's skids. Getting up to speed on everything took a lot of time. This extended to communications, learning how to use the LST satellite radio with a special keyboard for sending encrypted burst transmissions. Casanova, Little Big Man, Sourpuss, and I flew down under to train with the Australian Special Air Service. The flight took forever. We flew commercial, business class, from America's East Coast to the West Coast. Then we flew to Hawaii. From Hawaii, we landed at Sydney Airport on Australia's East Coast. From there, we flew across the continent to arrive in Perth on the West Coast. It was the longest flight of my life. Worst jet lag I ever had. In Perth, outside the Campbell Barracks, home of the Australian SAS, stood a monument to every Australian SAS soldier killed in the line of duty during training or combat. Nearly 40 names, many of them killed in training accidents. Inside the barracks, we stored our weapons in their safes, and they gave us a tour. In the evening, we stayed in town at a hotel on the Swan River. Although Sydney was the more popular destination, Perth cost less, had fewer tourists, and was prettier. The Australian SAS sand-colored berets each bore a patch showing a metallic gold and silver-winged dagger overlaid on a black shield. The major responsibilities of the Australian SAS, similar to the British SAS, which heavily influenced the creation of SEAL Team 6 and Delta, included counterterrorism and reconnaissance, sea, air, and land. SEALs have a history of working with the Australian SAS that goes back to the Vietnam War. When we hit the shooting range, the Australians focused on fast-moving targets at distances of 200 yards. We had trained more on longer-range static targets. They had semi-automatic .308 sniper rifles, while we used our bolt-action Win Mags. When sets of 4 targets whipped past us, we manually operated the bolt-action to load each new round in our rifles, only able to take down half of our targets. Meanwhile, the SAS just kept pulling their triggers, the gas operation automatically loading each new round as they knocked down all their targets. We sucked booty. I realized that in a fast-moving environment like urban warfare, it's a good idea to have someone with a semi-automatic .308 for the 200 to 400-yard range. Our automatic Car-15s were maxed out at the 200-yard range. When we went out to 500 and 700 yards, it was the Aussies' turn to suck booty. Their semi-automatics lost accuracy at longer range, while our bolt-action rifles retained accuracy. We also had better optics. I drilled a target at 725 yards. The SAS guy behind me called on the radio. "Did he hit that one?" "Yes." I fired again. "Did he hit that one?" "Yes." Again and again and again. He shook his head, and that evening we went to a bar where he bought me a redback beer, an Australian wheat beer named after the infamous Australian female spider that eats the male while mating, and has been known to bite humans, injecting them with its neurotoxic venom. It's a popular beer among the Australian SAS. "Excellent rifle, mate," he said. Days later, with ammo locked and loaded in our sound-suppressed Car-15s, we ventured into the outback for 10 days. One night, on a 20,000-acre ranch, we loaded onto the SAS assault Range Rovers. Each vehicle had a special ram over the front grille where a shaped explosive charge could be attached to blow open a door on contact. Then the operators could jump off of the vehicle's rails and assault the building, an impressive assault to watch. The Range Rover could also drop smoke from the rear to cover its escape. While driving, we shot moving targets. Kangaroos. The kangaroos would graze on the rancher's land, threatening to destroy the fragile landscape, leaving little for his livestock to eat and spreading disease. In contrast to cuddly stuffed kangaroos, especially when provoked or cornered, a wild kangaroo can grab a human with its front claws and disembowel him with its powerful rear claws. Casanova, Little Big Man, Sourpuss, and I used NODs and Insight Technology ANPEQ series infrared lasers mounted on our Car-15s. Shooting from a moving vehicle at running targets is tough. I moved my laser with the Kangaroos. From the SEAL vehicle, our guns went pow, 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 pow. 4 SAS guys rode in their Range Rover. Pow. The SEAL Range Rover sounded like the American Revolution. Pow, 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 pow. The Australians went pow. We fired 6 times for every one of their shots. Pow, 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 pow. The SAS thought we did a lot of spraying and praying until we surveyed the damage, and they saw the carcasses surrounding us. For every kangaroo they killed, we killed 6. Wow, you SEALs have some good toys. The next day, the rancher came out and saw the carnage. You boys did excellent work, thank you. He looked ready to give us an Australian high five. Back at their headquarters, we sat in a beautiful meeting room. The operators poured us some of their own SAS regiment labeled port wine from their SAS winery. Over drinks, one of the soldiers told us that he'd operated out of the same camp during the First Gulf War as the British SAS unit Bravo 20, which was an 8-man team sent to operate in enemy territory to report enemy positions and destroy targets, such as fiber optic communication lines. During the second day of their operation, a farmer driving a bulldozer spotted them. The SAS let him go instead of detaining or killing him. Over the next few days, Bravo 20 survived several firefights before becoming separated. Iraqi civilian fighters killed Robert Concilio. Vincent Phillips and Stephen Lane died of hypothermia. The Iraqis captured Andy McNabb, Ian Pring, Malcolm McGowan, and Mike Coburn, New Zealand SAS, who were later released. Chris Ryan evaded Iraqi troops for 8 days, trekking over 200 miles to Syria, the longest escape and evasion by any soldier. During the 30 minutes of telling us the story, the SAS operator became teary-eyed, seeming to know one or more of the operators who died. His main message to us was, if you're ever compromised, it's better to kill or tie up the person who sees you than to let him go. The Australian SAS treated us well. They taught us some stuff, and we taught them some stuff. We were all better for it, which is why exchanges are so beneficial. As General George Patton once said, thorough preparation makes its own luck.
And that was the end of Chapter 8, SEAL Team 6, from the book SEAL Team 6 by Howard Wasdin. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to be honest, smart, and beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.